Hey, everybody. Welcome to the weekend review edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. This is the condensed effort at this time of year because we're still trying to do multiple shows per day, as many days as humanly possible. Admittedly, I did not get one done on Sunday. For that, I apologize. Life just had too many things going on, but we managed to get two out on Saturday, so that was kind of a little bonus. And did it even out in the end? I don't know. Felt like it evened out for me. My voice is cooked, probably from having to talk to groups of children too many times. But we're going to get our way through this damn thing, and it's going to be lightly useful for all of you, I think. Maybe. We'll see. Hit that button at the bottom to like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Also, no matter where you're taking in the content, please take a second to subscribe. We're still trying to get a few new subscribers here at the end of the year so that we can start next year with a flourish, I say, with a nice, real firm base of subs. I'm at Dan Bespris on Twitter and Old Man Squad over on Blue Sky Network. Let's see, what do I want to actually put on the screen here? I want to start and just get right into it. So what we're going to do today, and because this is kind of the condensed version, that's not what I wanted. There's the one I wanted, is we're going to go through the names that really jumped out at me over the weekend, as opposed to going through every single team and, all 30 of their most recent performances, which is what we do during the regular season part of this Old Man Squad podcast. There's just so much weird going right now that format show would take 2.5 hours to do. But the key is really that there's like 20 to 30 names that are flying around right now. And so we're just going to focus right on those. So let's get into it with my favorite ads from over the weekend. Again, this is pulling from every team's most recent ball game, but I'm trying to pare it down so you guys don't have to look at a wall O box scores. These are basically in reverse chronological order of how I looked through the game. So if you're wondering how they came together, this is not in order of priority. Guerschon Yabusele is at the top of the board. Adem Bona was out for the Sixers over the weekend. Andre Drummond was out for the Sixers over the weekend. If that continues into today, Yabusele is a pretty safe play. The problem, of course, is that he is also questionable. So you kind of have to wait until a little bit later in the day to figure out if Yabusele is going to be a move that you're able to make. The nice thing is, with no other centers on the board, he can get all sorts of stuff that he doesn't get at power forward. 2 games back, for instance, he shot the ball horribly, but had 15 rebounds, a couple of assists, and a steal. And then he shot the ball a little bit better in their last game and had 14 points, 6 boards and assists, 2 steals, 2 3-pointers on better percentages. But they're in Houston today. It's a tough defensive matchup. So, again, wait until later in the day to make sure that he's in, but also probably wait until later in the day to make sure that Drummond is out, that Yabusele is starting, that there isn't another potential center, in which case you could pivot either to Drummond or Adem Bona. PJ Washington and Anthony Davis are the next 2 names on the list here, and I realize that these guys, by and large, are not going to be free agents in your league. I'm fully aware of that, but you got to at least check. Do your due diligence. Anthony Davis is 97% rostered in Yahoo leagues, but that means that there's a couple where someone was like, crap, I got to make it through this playoff matchup. I have to drop Anthony Davis because I don't know if he's coming back. And now it seems like he might be coming back as soon as potentially later this week. He got assigned to the G League affiliate for the Dallas Mavericks. That's the Texas Legends, to get some 5-on-5 work in. There's still a ramp-up process in place. So, I don't know if it's going to be later this week. I don't know if it's going to be next week. But at this point, you got to find a way to get Anthony Davis on your roster if he got dropped in your league. And that, again, is like 1 out of 30 of you that are watching this podcast. I'm fully aware that 29 to 50 of 51 of 30 or 51 or whatever it is, you're going to type in his name in your browser and you're going to see that he's already rostered, which is quite reasonable. He's Anthony frickin' Davis. But there might be one of you where he's not. And it's a similar story with maybe a little bit more sauce to it on PJ Washington, because he's more like 80-something percent rostered, I think, 81%. He had dropped under 80 because he'd been out for a while, also and kind of in and out of the lineup with ankle stuff. He looked great in his return. He had 29 and 12, 2 assists, a steal. Percentages were actually pretty good in that ball game. But again, like, you're not picking up PJ Washington for his percentages. You're picking him up because he can score, board, assist, steal, block, and hit 3-pointers. He's a counting stats guy that generally does enough in those to overwhelm the bad percentages. And right now, with the Mavericks having sort of nobody left on the roster, PJ is a great person to have on your team. So again, just type in his name, see if he got dropped in any of your leagues. He did, by the way, get dropped in one of mine. Anthony Davis didn't, so that was a 0 for me. But PJ was 1 out of 10 leagues. He got dropped. I just couldn't get him because I was out of moves by yesterday. But this is the kind of thing you need to be ready for. When a guy pops up, you never know when he might be back on someone's roster. I do think you should hold on to Naji Marshall. I put him on the list here because I wanted to just sort of emphasize that point. I know he's largely been added because he's been putting up, he had a string of career nights in a row like a week and a half ago, and he's been good ever since then. So this one's like, yes, obviously Dan Naji Marshall, but I mostly just wanted to put him on the list to stress the point that even with PJ Washington coming back and even with Anthony Davis kind of looming over a potential return, I would hold on to Naji Marshall. He is a free agent in one of my 10 leagues, which I think is kind of amazing, like considering what he's done. But they're off for a couple of days. The Mavericks have a 2-game week. I get it. It's a tough one in a 2-gamer. That's why you might not be able to roster him. Lately, he's been good enough in a 2-game week. All right, let's get back into names that might actually not be rostered in your league, and that would be Jaxson Hayes on the Lakers, who and again, I think a lot of this is tied to Rui Hachimura being out, but LeBron also being out certainly doesn't hurt Hayes' chance to play more because the Lakers are down kind of 2 of their guys that go to the bucket. I've talked about this before. I pretty much watch every Laker game. Yesterday was the rare one that I didn't get to watch live or played back later on. But one thing that you notice in watching LA is that Luka's a driver, but he's not really a finisher. Luka doesn't like try to attack the rim every time. He's going to get into the paint. He's going to draw defenses. But at that point, he's looking to kick it out to somebody or lob it to someone. Austin Reeves will take it to the paint. He's willing to get hit a little bit more. LeBron is willing to get hit. Rui is willing to get hit. And Jaxson Hayes is willing to get hit. And right now, and prior to this last ball game, the Lakers were down 3 of their 4 guys that are willing to get hit and go get some free throws out of it. Or even if you're not going to say like Jaxson Hayes is hunting for contact, he's at least a guy that's going to be around the rim because he can't shoot from anywhere else. So they were down 3 of their 4 guys that are comfortable at the rim. And now they have one of them back to go along with Austin Reeves. And I don't know, to me at least, the reason that this is notable is Hayes played 29 minutes in the last ball game. He played 33 in the game before he missed 4 in a row. Everybody's like, oh, the Lakers lost 4 in a row because LeBron went down. I said on this podcast over the weekend, I think the Lakers lost 4 in a row because they didn't have an interior presence of any kind. None. And if LeBron was in and Hayes was out, they'd probably still find a way to win because there's just so much firepower there. But from just like a strict team build standpoint right now, Jaxson Hayes might be the most important player on the Lakers roster. Slightly hyperbolic, but like it's remarkable the difference that he makes for this team. Okay, yes, there is a home road thing going on. The Lakers lost all 4 road games. The one in Boston, they had their guys. They didn't have Jaxson Hayes for that game, by the way. They did have LeBron, but like if they had LeBron or Hayes, they would have won in Brooklyn. They probably would have lost Milwaukee and Denver because those teams are good and it's a road game without all your guys, but like I think Hayes is going to play close to 30 minutes a game, basically, until either LeBron or Rui Hachimura comes back. That's generally where I'm getting at with this discussion, which in 30 minutes, he's probably not going to take 10 shots. Most games, Phoenix is particularly bad on defense, but like they're also about to play San Antonio, not exactly a world beater at that end of the court. So Hayes has a real good shot to shoot, 6 out of 7 from the floor in 30 minutes in a ball game. He's going to be a very good field goal percent guy in the near term. He's probably going to get somewhere between 5 and 10 rebounds over that stretch. You hope that he kind of splits the difference. He'll just be on the court long enough to get probably 1.5 to 2 assists. And if he's on the floor for 28, 30 some odd minutes, he's probably going to get you about 2 defensive stats during that time. He is not that heavily rostered. And I think he's going to be a really big positive in a few key categories. Cason Wallace is on the list, and I know he's also kind of a hard one to hold on to because the Thunder played back-to-backs over the weekend, and now they're off for a back-to-back. Basically, they're off today and tomorrow. Then they play Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, which are sort of the heavier dose days this week. Wednesday is the heavy dose. Today and Friday are sort of like the medium, large, medium, or medium, or whatever I said on the show last week. I think Cason Wallace has been good enough lately to warrant a hold through the 2 off days, top 65 over the last 2 weeks. A lot of that coming, obviously, since Jalen Williams went down. Yes, he's shooting over his head from the field at 57%, but a lot of his value is tied up in steals and blocks anyway. And so the consistent minutes are what's going to get him there, and then an extra couple of shots with Jalen Williams out is going to be part of it as well. So I think Cason Wallace is worth a hold in most formats. I think he's a difference maker in defensive stats alone. And with guys out for the Thunder, he has the opportunity to do a little bit more. Tre Jones I put on the board because I've done it, like I've talked about him about 7 times on the show, and some of you still haven't made the move. I don't fully understand why. He's still only 23% rostered in Yahoo leagues. And since Lonzo Ball and Josh Giddey went down, Jones has been spectacular. He's a great steals guy. He's a solid assists guy. He's a pretty good field goal percent guy because he doesn't really take 3-pointers, but whatever. Are we really that worried about that? He's hovering around the edge of the top 100 over the last week, if only because it's a small sample size. But like, if he does what he's done over the last week long term, which is 15-7 with a steal, a 3 on 49% from the field, that is better than top 100 numbers. That's just like a lot of weird dudes are inside the top 100, and so his got pushed down artificially. Those same exact numbers over the last 2 weeks have him in a top 80 range. And that's more like what those equate to longer term. And we don't know if Josh Giddey is ever coming back. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to get him back, but we don't know when. We don't know if Lonzo is even going to play the rest of this year. So, yeah. Deuce McBride also on the list, but again, you guys should have already made this move when Jalen Brunson went down. Miles is 32% rostered. Ooh. He is not available in any leagues that I'm a part of. Tre Jones is still on the wire in a couple of leagues that I'm in. And the only reason I haven't picked him up is because I'm hard charging other categories in those leagues. Sorry, one. He's available in one league that I'm in right now, which seems like lunacy. I think it's because he got dropped by a team that was making a playoff run. It was not. I misspoke a moment ago. So McBride, obviously, he's been very good. Now a host of Wizards is on my ads board here. Kyshawn George, who I've been talking about for the better part of a month, and I don't know why I need to keep talking about it. Maybe because his percentages suck. But over the last 2 weeks, he's a top 40 fantasy play, despite shooting 42% from the field, because he got his free throw number up. He's at 13 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, 2.5 3-pointers, and only 1.7 turnovers over that stretch. He's been very, very good, and he hasn't even gotten on a hot stretch yet. So Kyshawn George, I've said this for weeks, belongs on rosters. What order did I write these guys down in? Justin Champagnie is the next one on the board. And he is not that heavily rostered yet, but it did jump over the last 3 days, basically. He looks great since Bilal Coulibaly went down. First game, he didn't shoot the ball well, so he sort of slid under the radar with 5 points, 8 boards, a steal, and a block, and a 3. But the last 2 games, he shot the ball better, and that's woken everybody up to Justin Champagnie's fantasy game. He has 5 steals over those 2 games. He has 22 rebounds over those 2 games, 33 points, 5 threes. He's made all of his free throws. He's actually made his last, I think, 10 free throws in a row, so that's a nice little mini stretch going on there. And he's shot 12 out of 19 over that stretch as well, which, again, we know that's not going to hold forever, but he is a 50%er from the field so far this year, and he has big-time steals and rebounding upside from a small forward shooting guard position. So huge, huge reasons to pick up Justin Champagnie, especially if you want some out-of-position stats. He can get you those. Alex Sarr is finally being turned loose a little bit, and I don't know if this is going to stick the rest of the season or if it's just like, oh, he had a couple of better performances, so they turned him loose in those. But 34 points and 5 threes, he just had a really big ball game. I do think that overall, Sarr probably ends up more as a highly rated schedule stream or a big time punt play, because we know enough about his free throw percent and his field goal percent to know that they're not just going to magically be good the rest of the way. But like all season long, we've seen the outlines of what sort of upside he could potentially bring to the table in fantasy: the blocks, the rebounds. He can get some assists out of the center spot. He can score. He can hit threes. It's been the percentages. It's the PJ Washington conundrum. And the difference is that PJ's done enough of the other stuff where Sarr has not. But again, if you're punting field goal, Alex Sarr is an obvious yes. If you're punting free throw, he's a pretty obvious yes. If you're just hard charging blocks and smatterings of other things, he's a yes. It's only if you care about the percentages a lot that he's a no. And then finally, the last obvious ad on the list here is Russell Westbrook, who, and we've talked about this 1,000 times. Anytime anyone is out for the Nuggets, Russ is a play. And Aaron Gordon is in and out of the lineup over and over again. This was the back end of a back-to-back, so Gordon sat that one out. He's not making it through every game anyway. So Russ, I think you got to keep on your roster. He's on like a 6 or 7 game, pretty damn useful streak for just tons of counting stats. And he also has the same kind of PJ Washington issue of low field goal percent, bad free throw, and a lot of counting stats. If you're in the right punt build, he's an obvious and clear yes rest of season. If you're not, you sort of play him when somebody's out, because that's when the good outweighs the bad. And we're just a host of guys today on the ads board that are percentages messes. Let's go to the next list of guys. And before we do that, I got to remind you, of course, of our continuing partnership with the great folks at Bet Online. March Madness is just a day away, and Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on March Madness. Whether you've done this a million times or you're just getting into it for the first time, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. They've got every Cinderella story just ready to go for you to bet on. They've got every hat trick if you're betting on hockey. They've got odds, stats, and more on every game, every play, and every win. Plus, on top of all the college basketball madness, they've got a $200,000 bracket contest that you got to get in on now. Get in on it today before the brackets start getting filled in, so you can actually be a part of that fun stuff. And that's why BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source on the interwebs. BetOnline, the game starts here. Here are the guys that I classified as very close, but I'll say the same thing I said last time, which is the very close list could absolutely be the ads board. 100% these guys could just be put on your team. So again, I want to be as loud and clear about that as humanly possible. These are not guys that I think, oh, I just need to wait on them. These are guys that if they fit for your mold, then you put them on your roster. But for me personally, I either need to see a little bit more out of them, or there's something that needs to be a certain way the rest of today for me to make the move on these guys. But let's get into them a little bit now after this very quick commercial break. Ricky Council IV is the first name on the list, and Philadelphia is going to be the site of a few of these things. And I didn't put Dembona on this list, and frankly, he probably should be, because if he's healthy, he deserves to be considered. Council now has played pretty big minutes for 4 games in a row, and what we're seeing out of Ricky is he's not a big three-point shooter. He can score a little bit. He's a good foul shooter. I mean, again, limited sample size, but 14 out of 15 from the free throw line ain't nothing. He has put up some okay defensive stats during that stretch. He has 3 steals and 4 blocks over those 4 games. Doesn't assist all that much. Did grab a bunch of rebounds in the last ball game, but only had 11 through the 3 prior games to that. So he's 17 over his last 3, which is fine. So to me, he's close, but I haven't quite seen enough all around to say, oh yeah, this is obviously a guy that needs to be on fantasy rosters. I just think there's a little bit of upside in defensive stats. The steals and the blocks are intriguing. The free throw percent is intriguing. The scoring is intriguing. But I got to see a slight improvement at field goal percent, which may or may not happen, because again, we don't know a ton about what this dude can do when unleashed for a little bit. And I'd like to see a little bit more about what his rebounding is. And did the rebounding number spike because Guerschon Yabusele was the center and like no one on the team was over 6'6" on the court. So there's all these little things you need to be thinking about with a guy like Council. Also, Jared Butler. I know I'm going out of order from what you guys can see on the screen. Jared Butler, to me, is a great source of assists, but he has colossal holes in his fantasy game. He's not a good field goal percent guy. He doesn't get many steals or blocks. His turnovers are probably going to be not the greatest. They haven't been that bad lately. He'll shoot the 3 ball, but it isn't a ton of it. He doesn't score very much. So he's kind of a one-trick pony. I guess he's not a terrible foul shooter, but he's not a big positive there. And when you're a one-trick pony, you have to be so good in that one trick to actually make you a useful pony, as it were. And Butler, again, is not that far off. He reminds me a little bit of Isaiah Collier with more 3-pointers and fewer steals. But then the story on both those guys is that they just have to fit your team mold. You need assists. It has to be a target number for you, and you probably need to be punting points because he's just not going to score all that much. Probably around 10 a game, even in starters minutes. And then we also don't know if anybody's going to come back for the Sixers, which is kind of the same thing for Ricky Council, but my guess is that nobody is. Tyus Jones doesn't require a lot of explanation. Bradley Beal left the game against the Lakers early with continuing tightness in various parts of his body. This time it was hamstring tightness. If Beal is in, I'm not playing Tyus Jones. If Beal is out, I am definitely playing Tyus Jones. That one's very easy. Kyle Filipowski is on the very close list because we know when to use him at this point. And it seems like Walker Kessler is going to either get every other game off or he's going to get the games off against tanking opponents and also half of every back-to-back off. So you might actually see Kessler sit today, which is the second half of a back-to-back. Or did he sit out against – no, he played against Minnesota. He might sit out today against Chicago, and then he might sit out again against Washington. But he might play both Boston and Cleveland, and he might also play Memphis to start. Like, he might play 3 games in a row after sitting out a couple. It's hard to know. I think with Kessler, you have to basically just assume he's going to miss half of every ball game. And so what do you do with a guy like Filipowski? Well, I mean, when Kessler's in, Filipowski's not very good. When he's out, he's excellent. How does that level off for Kyle? I mean, probably just barely inside the top 100 because he's a pretty good source of points, rebounds, and threes on decent field goal percent when Kessler's out. And when Kessler's in, he's not a very good source of almost anything. But can he do just enough when Kessler plays that the big games when Walker's out counterweight that? I don't know what to tell you, man. Utah's got a 4-game week. I think it's probably good enough in head-to-head. Roto, you just deploy him on days when Kessler sits. That's the story on Filipowski, and I think that's pretty straightforward. Aaron Nesmith is an interesting one. He had a really big last ball game after having a couple of down days, but over the last 2 weeks, he has been top 70 because he's shooting 51% or 52 rather percent over that stretch. 83 at the foul line. He's a very good source of percentages, threes, and sometimes steals and sometimes points. And again, he's another one where you kind of just have to hope that the number of good games outweighs the number of bad. And over the last 2 weeks, it has. Prior to that, it hadn't been. It was like the good games were a little bit quieter. The bad games were almost the same. Lately, the good games have been big. He has a 27-point game in there. He has a 30-point game blended in. He has a 21 blended in there with the 9-point games that, again, those are the ones where you're like, okay, can I sort of suffer my way through to get to the other stuff? I don't have enough confidence to use Nesmith and Roto because I don't know which days are going to be the good ones. Head-to-head, he's fine because they've got another 4-game week and then another 4-game week and then another 4-game week. And so, again, you're going to aggregate enough with him to make him worthwhile. Kevin Huerter is the next name on the list. He is the definition of a very close because he's shooting enough and he's playing enough to be fantasy useful. He's just not making enough shots to be fantasy useful. He's shooting just 38% over the last week while taking 14 shots per game. But we know enough to say long-term, if Kevin Huerter's taking 14 shots a game, he's a fantasy play. He's top 90 or better in that, but he's top 150 right now because of the terrible field goal percent. Everything else for Kevin is fine. He's hitting 2 threes. He's at 13 points, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, 5 rebounds. If the shots start going in, the field goal percent goes from being a terrible, earth-shatteringly bad negative to a mild negative. The points go up by probably a few, 2 to 3 per ball game. So 13 points becomes more like 15 or 16. The threes go up from 2 to 2.5, 3, depending on how hot he gets. And like now you're talking about a dude. But when he's cold, he is a little bit of a tough deployment. So, Roto, let's wait until he warms up. When he warms up, you play him. Try to catch him on a little bit of a warm streak. Head-to-head, Chicago's got a good schedule this week after a bad one last week around. Then they actually roll back into a bad schedule again. But if ever there were a week to play Kevin Huerter, this would be the one. Scotty Pippen Jr. and Luke Kennard are kind of a combo deal here. We'll wait and find out if John Morant's going to be back for the next ball game. My guess is that he is, but I hate to say something as definitive until I know for sure. But it was the second half of a back-to-back. And Memphis doesn't have another back-to-back for a little bit. Memphis also has a bad schedule coming up. They have a pair of 3-game weeks with a 3-day break right in the middle of them. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they don't play. So if you've got the Grizzlies, assume that this is probably not the time to use Pippen Jr., Kennard in a Roto league. If you have them as a holdover from last week, you might as well just play them for a day, or crap, you can play them through Wednesday or even Friday if you wanted to. This is kind of, by the way, a difficult week to stream, and you'll hear all about that when I do our weekly breakdown show, because the only team that has a good schedule, like super late in the week, is the Atlanta Hawks, and they're off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A couple of teams have like kind of okay schedules at the end of the week, but they don't have many streaming options. So this is a very tough week to schedule stream, but you got to stay tuned. We'll do that show in a little bit. In any case, for right now, I wouldn't go out and pick up Pippen Jr. or Kennard, but if you have them, you might as well just see what they do today. In head-to-head, that is. In Roto, no. Moses Moody, you could probably add. He's been good enough lately. He's been a top 100 guy over the last couple of weeks. Basically, since Brandon Pajemski went down, Moody's been playable. But there's some unsustainable stuff going on there, like 94% free throw on kind of medium volume, 58% from the field with 2 threes and 1.5 steals. I think the steals could stick. I think the threes could stick. I think the free throw and field goal probably come down a little bit. What I would say for now is if you're playing him in Roto, you're hunting threes and steals, 3 and D basically. If you're playing him in head-to-head, you're doing it because the Warriors have a back-to-back to start the week, and frankly, they have a decent schedule, and you're trying to compete in free throw, threes, and steals. Those are categories that you really definitely want to try to win this week. If you're not hunting at least 2 of those 3 categories, I don't think he makes sense in whatever format, and that's why he ends up in this very close bucket. The last list right now is the watch list, and there's a pretty good chunk of names on the watch list. And again, some of them maybe even make sense for your team. Brandon Williams in Dallas, who's coming off the bench now, but he still played 30 minutes. He's just going to have some efficiency stuff. And again, as the Mavericks get guys back, he's just not going to be tasked with doing as much. You know, instead of 15 shots a game, he got 8 in their last one. Instead of 6, 7, 8 assists, he got 2. No 3-pointers. 1 steal, 1 block. Okay, that works. But, you know, he's not a rebounder to begin with. So as they get any big men back, that's a number that's going to go down. And their schedule sucks. So that's kind of why I'm sitting on that one. Spencer Dinwiddie, same general idea there. Like, it's not that, I mean, it's not the same fantasy outlook as Brandon Williams, but it is a similar situation where he's going to get to do plenty because the Mavs are still so shorthanded. But Dinwiddie gets almost no defensive stats. He doesn't make that many threes. He's a very bad field goal percent guy. When he's hot, he can get you points and assists. When he's not, he's maybe going to get you like kind of okay assists, but not many points. And then people mistakenly think he's a great foul shooter. He's not. He's like, fine, 81% point guard. That's not helping you. That's pretty much holding you steady. I'm not a big Dinwiddie guy, again, unless you're really hunting points and assists. And that's why, to me, he's more of a watch list dude. AJ Lawson in Toronto, I mean, he's got too many big holes in his fantasy game. Points leagues, you can give him a longer look because he's just out there jacking up shots, but no defensive stats, terrible percentages, both of them really, really bad. Rebounds relatively well from that with shooting guard eligibility, so that at least is something. Not going to pass all that much when there are other point guards on the court. So again, I think you got to be pretty desperate to go down that path. His teammate, however, Colin Castleton, is intriguing to me, um, even though he can't shoot. And that's the problem with Castleton is that he's a big man who's 50% or lower from the field in a lot of his recent ball games. But he gets some free throws. He can block some shots, not a ton, but some. And he's rebounding really well. So again, it's more specialist level appeal, but the minutes are a little bit more consistent than you might have thought. Like even in the games where the main guys are in, he's still getting 24, 25, 26, 27, somewhere in that neck of the woods. And he's getting 9, 10 rebounds in that amount of playing time. I'd like to see the blocks a little bit more consistent out of Colin because he has 5 in his last 6 ball games, but it's a 2 and a 3 and then 4 zeros around it. And his turnovers are terribly high. So not quite. Vit Krejci in Atlanta, I don't think you need to pick him up, but his minutes are slowly trending in the right direction. So let's see if they start to give him a little bit more to look at. Keon Johnson in Brooklyn, now that we know Cam Thomas is shut down for the year, and I have incredible gripes. I have a punt bigs team where I lost Donovan Mitchell for the entire week except Sunday. I lost Cam Thomas early in the week. Keontae George missed the entire week. Jeremy Grant missed the entire week. I'd use every single roster move on rest of season guys that just stopped playing, basically. Oh, I had Kelly Olynyk on that team, and he didn't play the first 2/3 of the week either. It's really bad luck. I know that happens this time of year, but, like, looking at my opponent's team, he basically lost Josh Giddey, and that was it. And that was an actual injury. It sucks. It sucks. My team was a freaking juggernaut in that punt bigs build. I was rolling almost the entire season, and then all those guys go down at the same time. I'm so irritated by it. And the most amazing thing is that you guys don't care. You know, what am I doing on this one? You don't care. I lost by 28 points. 28 points. That's all it would have taken. Donovan Mitchell plays probably one more game. I have a decent chance to win. Keontae George plays any games. Jeremy Grant plays any games. Oh, I had Noah Clowney on that team because he started the week with the playing in the back-to-back, and then he sat out the last 3. And then he's just done. Even the guys I picked up to replace injured dudes missed the whole damn week. Like any one of these guys makes it through the week, I win, and instead 5 guys go down. Ugh, kill me. I know. Listen, I'm gonna cover it. I'm gonna cover it all the time because that's what most of you guys do. But head to head is just such an awful mess right now. Keon Johnson is who we were talking about in Brooklyn because with all these guys in and out of the lineup, he's been putting up some pretty decent numbers again after really having kind of a down stretch. And I don't know. To me, that's what makes it a little bit hard is that he's not a predictable sort. Last 7 days, he's top 160 when the numbers have actually looked kind of good because the percentages suck. So that's why he's a watch list guy for me. Kyle Anderson in Miami, this is mostly because Andrew Wiggins is questionable. And when he's out, it does seem like Slow-Mo is getting at least kind of a look these days. And with the Heat, nobody's really trustworthy. Slow-Mo didn't play for a week before his 30-minute outburst in their last ball game. So again, watch list. Karlo Matkovic and Jose Alvarado and Bruce Brown. Screw it. Let's just roll them all together into one discussion here. If the Pelicans start to pull the plug on anyone, it's go time on these dudes. And we just haven't seen it yet because Olynyk missed some time and then Eve Missy's had an ankle injury and Zion resting some ball games. Like that's why Matkovic has been good lately. The Pelicans have not shown a willingness to shut guys down yet. It's why I just am sitting here rubbing my hands together, waiting on Jose Alvarado, who's freaking 50% rostered in my competitive leagues, and I don't fully understand why. He had one good ball game in there when CJ McCollum was out. That's what we're waiting for. We need CJ to go down. Or like for Bruce Brown, we need some wings to go down. Or for Karlo Matkovic, we need 2 bigs to be out. But you can't know until the moment before the ball game starts. And then the last name on the list is Keldon Johnson, who I've been getting a lot of questions about, and that's the reason that we're going to talk about him. He's top 50 over the last week, but he's also shooting 58% from the field and 87% at the free throw line with 1.5 steals per game. These are unsustainable numbers for Keldon Johnson. We've seen him now for a number of seasons in a row, so we know what his fantasy profile is, and it's not that. He's a half a steal guy per game, basically, up as high as about 0.7 if he's playing full starters minutes. So 1.5, no. 58% from the field, no. He's a 47%er in his career. He's hitting threes lately at a better clip than his career mark, which is 35.5%. Not bad, by the way. But lately, he's at about 50% or better over the last week. And the free throws, he's a mid-70s guy. So high 80s? No, I do not trust Keldon Johnson, Sam. I am. And so I would suggest you don't either. But I get it. Like, guys go on heaters, and maybe his heater continues to go. Thanks for watching, everybody. That is the condensed version. I know it was still 37 minutes long, but that's condensed. If you made it this far, please do hit that subscribe button. I guess it's down in that corner for most of you guys. No matter how you're taking in the content, please, if you're finding us for the first time here and you're just trying to make your playoff push or whatever, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're on iTunes or Spotify, I know Spotify is really easy to do it. iTunes is a little bit more of a pain in the butt, or the Apple Podcast app. Please take a moment to drop that 5-star review. And again, still doing stuff on social media, not as much as obviously the middle of the season because things are so weird right now. And like, I need 2 half-an-hour podcasts to actually get all this information out. So mushing it into a tweet or series of tweets is almost damn near impossible. But I'll see you guys at Dan Vespers on Twitter or Old Man Squad on Blue Sky. And I'll see you actually in just a couple hours. We'll have another show in about 2 hours coming up, about 2 hours from now. And this one drops, which is our weekly preview and streaming guide for your probably finals if you guys started your playoffs when we told you to. And unfortunately, this is when it happened last year, too, as things got really stupid about 4 weeks out from the end of the season. And I hate to shave off another week, but I might be telling you guys to end your leagues 4 weeks early next year. Grumble. All right, I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. In a couple hours.